And good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Magic.tv, Magic and Occultism Without Apologies. And unfortunately, tonight I am not joined by my better half of the show, the beloved Wade Long. There's a technical misunderstanding between our schedules, but I also wanted to go take this time and wish him a happy birthday. Wade has been the heart and soul of this show. I would never have started Magic DV without him. So, since either he can't be with us right now or he will be with us later on, I was granted by the gods, the spirits, the demons, and the angels the opportunity to bring back one of our top viewed guests ever. Um, this man has set the bar when it comes to grimoire work, and I'm honored to be discussing today his upcoming book about grimoire magic, Claves Intelligentiarum. I hope I said that right. And best of yet, his upcoming course, which sold out within 9 hours of purchasing it. It is with great honor Magic.tv once again brings back the renowned, the respected, the ever so gentlemanly David Rankine. David, good afternoon to you, good sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Robert.
Well, it's a real treat to have heavy hitters on the show twice in one season. But when I heard the news from you, when I heard that you were going into the online education field with your next book, I just said I had to just get you on the show again to give you the platform to talk about it. So first, let's talk straight up to it. You guys who don't know who David Rankine is, you're in the wrong show. Okay, we did a huge introduction segment there before, and if you haven't read his work, you're missing half your life. So look him up. He's got books out there that has changed occult study, and if you don't own the Grimoire Encyclopedia, you're on the wrong channel. Okay, that's your hint. But for now, I want to talk about your upcoming book. I want to know all about it. Start from the beginning, the middle, and what we can expect for this amazing book. Please tell me all about it, David.
Okay, so the book is a do-it-all book for conjuring the planetary intelligences. Last year, I was doing a lecture for an Italian group on Conjuration, on the intelligences. And as I was preparing the material, Jason Miller's words in the blog he wrote about the Grimoire Encyclopedia popped back into my head about not hearing the voice of Rankine the Conjurer enough. And that just triggered something. And I realized that I always recommend the intelligences as a good entry point into the grimoire tradition for people.
Very true.
They are traditionally there described as being affable, benevolent, and courteous. They're a good way in for people who haven't worked with spirits before. Rather than jumping into the Ars Goetia or trying to call up an archangel, which is never easy at the best of times.
Yeah.
The intelligences are a really good entry point. But after that thought of what Jason Miller said came to my head, I realized that although I've released this booklet of the conjurations from one of the manuscripts, which is the only place there is a conjuration of the intelligences, Sloan 3821, the material that goes around that, like the magic circle to use and all the other things you do, is not included. It's just the conjurations. So I was essentially giving people empty advice. It's like it is the best entry point, but how can people start if they don't have everything else that they need as well? And therefore, I've got to write it up as a book. So people who've never worked grimoire stuff before, or people who have, but particularly people who haven't, everything they need to know without going anywhere else. So all the things you need to do for the preparation, the purification, all the consecrations, the practices, absolutely everything. What you do, why you do it, and how you do it, so that it is all there, which I've never actually seen in a book before, where someone gives you everything without you needing to go here or there or hints at stuff. This is no hints. It's just straight out. This is how I see it. This is why I see it this way. And if need be, these are the sources. So you can go and look for yourself.
All right, because I'm kind of curious. Would you say that the methods in this book, would it cause an easier time for a potential grimoire magician to summon spirits, as example with the Goetia or the Enochian methods? Is this like a nice entry point into these practices? Is it easier, or is it equally as difficult and demanding?
It's still demanding. I don't personally think that magic is difficult. This is something I've written and say it in a number of places. To me, it's layers of simplicity that build upon themselves rather than complexity. I think once you look at magic like that, it's a much easier way to perceive things from the point of view of not getting hung up on stuff. We're going, oh my God, it's too difficult for me. It's like, no, it's not too difficult, but it's like layers. You know, you build your foundations, you build on that, you build up. It's like, I've got a saying, you don't start at the top of the pyramid. There's a lovely view from the top of the pyramid, but you've got to build your foundations, you've got to build the layers and work up to get to that point where you have a wonderful view.
Definitely.
And so this is really a foundation text for people. Like, this gives, like I said, the whole process and everything you need to do beforehand, and even things that you do afterwards. So it's just the whole thing.
Since we're dealing with the planetary spirits here, I beg to ask: will we be dealing with the Arbitel, like the Olympic spirits, or will we be doing a different pantheon of spirits in this book?
It's the Planetary Intelligences rather than the Olympic spirits.
Okay. And is there any reason why you chose to go with the planetary intelligence over the Olympic spirits, just out of curiosity?
I've worked with both a lot, but I think the intelligences, because they fit into very specifically into the hierarchy where you first call on the power of the archangel and then you call on the intelligence, you know, they have their place, and they're a good entry point for working with other spirits in the hierarchy as well.
One magician told me that there's a lot of value in working with the planetary intelligences because it would make dealing with the planetary angels and even the higher angels a lot easier to work with due to the level of connection you have with the energy that comes with the planetary intelligences. Is this something you adhere to, or is this something that you've debunked in your years of study?
I think there is truth to that because, like I say, they are part of a hierarchical structure. And you've got your archangel, then you've got your angels and your intelligences, and then the planetary spirits or demons, as they're also known. And from that perspective, yes, because you start to gain a connection to the archangels when you're working with the intelligences anyway. Because, for example, the Laman that you make that you wear on your chest has the seal of the intelligence on the front and the archangel on the back facing your heart. And like I say, you do call on the archangel. You're not invoking or conjuring the archangel, but you are calling on it so that there is a connection of that power of that archangel to that Laman that you are wearing. And from that perspective, yeah, I think it does set you into that hierarchy and get you into, you know, like the structure. So it's definitely something that is, I would agree with that. I wouldn't debunk it.
Oh, that's good to know. Now, the next thing I want to know is the original source text. When creating this wonderful manuscript, because I've been given a teaser copy of it, what was your original source material in creating this book? And more importantly, I'd also like to know, like, why did you choose to go in this route with all the other forms of spirits we could be working with? Why did you choose this particular set of spirits, the intelligences, than anything else?
Well, the material that's in the book is the process that I use and have used over the years I have built up. And it's not all from a single source. There's a lot of stuff from the Key of Solomon. There's things from other places as well. But the thing with the Solomonic tradition is it's always been a process of innovation and development. And so with the intelligences, stuff that works and works repeatedly is what is in there. You know, that process that I have put in the book is stuff that has been worked repeatedly with success. So my hope is obviously that the people who buy the book and who also follow the steps in there will have similar success.
So needless to say, the book is David Rankine's method of working with the planetary intelligences. Am I correct?
You are correct, yes.
All right. Now, the question I want to ask is this, because I've read through it, and it is incredibly easy to digest. So once again, thank you for I've complained in previous episodes that sometimes authors take methods and obscure them with unintelligible English at times. But yes, based on what I've read in the text, it is incredibly easy to digest, and anybody who takes the time to read the text will actually be able to apply it in a very, how do I say, comprehensive manner. Now, my question is this: will the methods that you taught in the book be able to be applied if I used a different set of spirits? Let's say the theory and the structure behind the book, if I decided, well, you know what, I want to try this with the Olympic spirits this month. Will it work, or would it be something that you don't recommend?
Well, funnily enough, part of the forthcoming course towards the end will be applying that same structure to working with other spirits like Olympic spirits, planetary angels, not archangels, angels, because angels lower in the hierarchy, easy to have success contacting, because the archangels are not very accessible despite what people might claim. So yeah, I was talking about the tweaks that you would make to work with those other spirits, but it is like a framework which can be easily adapted to work with other spirits. I will also do some stuff with demons and how it can be tweaked for those as well in the course. And in fact, I've come to the conclusion that I'm going to have to write a follow-on book.
Right. There we go.
Where it's like, if you've got Claves Intelligentiarum, then the follow-on book will go through these other spirits and the tweaks that you would make, plus other things I've been thinking I need to expand on and add in for people, so that as they start doing stuff, more things can be added in, and it's more details, things that I feel I could have gone into more detail. So, for example, the follow-on book will have a chapter on working with spirits of place for developing a relationship if you're going to be doing outdoor conjuration.
Because I wanted to ask, so like, would the framework you're offering be applicable? I know the answer to the next one I'm going to ask, but would it be applicable to a goetic evocation, or would that be a little bit more heavy tweaking?
There'd be a bit more tweaking from the point of view of you would change the circle. Obviously, if you're doing goetic, then you would apply the conjuration sequence that's in Ars Goetia. So you're going to have more conjurations. So yes, you could use it, but it would be tweaked. This is most of it is a framework that's going to work for any grimoire conjuration. The preparation, the purification, the consecrations are going to work for any, working with pretty much any grimoire. Which at the end of the day, most of the grimoires, they don't have. They were like magicians' notebooks, so they only have the bits in that they wanted to remember. So you don't tend to. Not many of them actually have a coherent structure of step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this gives that, and then, like I say, in the course and in the next book, I will talk about how that can be tweaked for working with, different groups of spirits.
Because the scholar in me of magic here is just trying to figure out, like, because I love reading through it. I mean, like, I have more questions that I think one episode can accommodate. But I did want to ask about the translation of certain things. Like, I had to ask Goetia, and the next one logically would be, how hard would it be to use this framework in an Enochian working? Or would you say it's impossible? Because from what I understand about Enochian, there's a lot of crazy stuff there that we don't have in other workings.
Yeah, I mean, the style of Enochian, if you're going back to Dee's Enochian, is basically, purification and scrying and prayer. So this... Whilst all the preparatory stuff would be the same, I mean, Enochian kind of stands separate to the rest of the grimoire material. And the original Enochian and the way it's been post Golden Dawn are quite different things. So it's a case of how you would work it. But I mean, I personally wouldn't apply the structure in quite the same way. That would require major tweaks, although I would still stand by the preparatory bathing and prayer. I mean, for example, I use the penitential psalms, which is something that Dee did in his preparatory work. So, there's obviously things like that which do match up. but it's a slightly different form of conjuration with the Enochian. And also you have the table of practice inside the circle, for example. There's no external triangle. So there are some quite big differences with the Enochian. It's an interesting system, but of course Enochian has this reputation, so a lot of people view this being very like macho and very tough. People do Enochian without really knowing what the hell they're doing a lot of the time.
Exactly.
It's a system that obviously gets results, but it's not, for me, I mean, I did a lot of Enochian work when I was younger, but it just doesn't hold much of an appeal personally. I know some people swear by it, but for me, I much prefer, for example, like I said, the Planetary Intelligences, who are very accessible and practical. The intelligences get things done, and that's if you're working with spirits, you make requests. I need this such and such thing done by such and such a time. Then the intelligences are very good for that, and at the end of the day, somebody could get by with just working with intelligences without needing to move over and start doing Ars Goetia or working with other demons or what have you. You can pretty much get what you need from the intelligences.
I'm paraphrasing here, but Lon Duquette mentioned once in one of his podcasts that if you're going to use Enochian energies to summon things, they're not going to give you what you want. They're just going to kind of like upgrade your software and make you more able to get what you want. Would you go as far as to say that the planetary intelligences do the opposite? They're like, I want a date, they give you the date. I want a job, they give you the job. Or will it be more of like upgrading you as well and giving you the means?
The intelligences, there's two ways to really approach them. One is through information, and that's where the affable nature comes in, and that they tend to be quite willing to give information and, if asked, to give advice about how to deal with situations. And the other is to get specific results you need, like say to get a job or pass your driving test or whatever it may be. Then they are good for that as well. So they're more enablers rather than upgraders, I would say. They help you, with getting the things that you are seeking, be it information or some practical result.
And with this being said, because like I have my own working with one of the intelligences, so I found it as it was like an omen to me, because when I noticed that you wrote about it, I said, okay, this is a sign that I should take this course. And I have a personal relationship with the spirit Hagiel. I have a long story about that I've shared to people, how Hagiel basically opened doors for me. So I have a lot of respect for her as an angel. Now, are there any spirits in the book that you're excited to be introducing your students to in the upcoming course, which we're going to talk about next? Like, is it like, oh, I really want them to know this spirit and I want them to work with this spirit? It's kind of like a tribute to it.
Yeah, I mean, I have particular fondness for Nakiel, the solar intelligence. I recently told a story on Glitch Bottle about Conjuration that I was the seer for. A woman was doing the Conjuration, and that for the only time I've ever seen it in my life, he turned up halfway through the first Conjuration. He didn't even went to the whole Conjuration. He was there in the crystal, and I went, whoa. I've never seen a spirit turn up so fast. I know people claim, oh, I snap my fingers and they turn up and nonsense like that, but he was there. And then the reason it was there, I mean, she continued and did the whole Conjuration because I just sort of muttered that he was already there. But obviously, being a good magician, she wasn't going to not do that. It would be disrespectful, at least not to complete the Conjuration. And the reason he turned up so quick was this thing because he knew her. And she's like, but I've never conjured you. And it's like, yeah, but, you did 300 years ago in Greece.
Whoa.
I was like, and it's funny because she had memories that she hadn't told me about of being in Greece 300 years ago, a lifetime there. So that blew me away. It's like Nakiel is actually saying to us that spirits can recognize the soul of a person when it's in a different body, and still feel a connection to that person.
I wanted to ask, but please go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So, that him divulging that and the advice he gave, which was so good, and absolutely everything came to fruition exactly as requested, really sort of made me look at him and feel that, this is a spirit moving forward that I'm going to work more with, because he's told me stuff that's blown me away, but he is also really insightful. Like I say, everything he said, exactly as he said, happened for her, and every bit of advice she took, things worked out perfectly. And it's like, that is what you want. That's the ideal, isn't it? So
yes, of course.
So I was like, this is a very positive spirit, and I am going to continue promoting him on the way. I also have a soft spot for Tyrael, the Mercurial intelligence. But that's, I think, because it was when I was going to do a working with him back in 2008 and didn't have his seal to hand, so I drew it up from the cameo, and that was what made me first realize that the Agrippa seals weren't correctly drawn up by the system that he uses at the Eight Becker. So that sort of flash of inspiration made me kind of feel a soft spot for Tyrael. But it's what you'd expect from a mercurial spirit, to have that fresh knowledge. And I mean, since I wrote the book, I did consider the possibility that, in fact, those sigils that are given by Agrippa, whilst they might not be quite right drawn by Becker, it might be that the spirits told him, when you work with me, do the seal like this. It's possible that it wasn't that he necessarily did it wrong. It might be those were the way he was told, because there's this thing where you're working with spirit, and it'll say, actually, to get me to come really quickly to respond, rather than using this one you've had, use this instead. When they give that personal connection with you,
like a direct dial number.
Yeah, it's like, here's a better dial number. This is my personal number. This is not the general number. So it's possible that Agrippa was putting that in there, rather than just dissing Agrippa and saying he did it all wrong.
Yeah,
I have to say it's possible. We don't know. I'm saying it is a possibility that maybe it wasn't him giving them the wrong ones. It was him giving what he felt were the right ones.
Which brings me to my next question about the intensity or the stress of the purification period before practicing the stuff in the book. Would you say that it's as demanding as other grimoire tradition practices, or would you say that it's lighter?
Well, I think for any conjuration, you're looking at least 7 days of preparation. I mean, some say for some grimoires say 9. I think it's 9 for the Ars Goetia, for example. But I like that week is a week, and it's a build up of it gets more intense as you go along. At the beginning of it, you're abstaining from things like meat, fish, any sexual activity, alcohol, drugs. I add in the whole thing of the electronic fast, so avoiding things like gaming and watching television and going on TikTok or YouTube, and only doing the bare minimum of things you have to with replying to emails, because it's a distraction. You should focus in concentrating on that. But I mean, as you get towards the end, the way I do it, because I think it works very well, is it's only the last day that you just have water, and I advise, and I have apple juice, so that your blood sugar doesn't take too much of a hit. Or if you don't drink apple juice, another juice that's going to give you some natural fruit sugar. If you're working with demons or angels, that I would extend to the last 3 days.
Yikes.
Rather than 1 day, where you're only having that. With the occasion, like if you're really struggling, you could have an apple. But I've tried in the past. I've done a 7-day water-only fast. I will tell you, by the end of it, I was in no state to do anything. I was, like, off my face. And so I think maybe some people can do a 7-day fast, but I was just in too much of an altered space to attempt to do any serious magic, which is why I've gone with like a fasting process that is rigorous, but doesn't tax the body to the point that it makes it, it interferes with the likelihood of success.
Some magicians can advocate what they call the Islamic fast, where you have to limit the intake, but you can have a little bit more during sundowns. Would that affect the intensity or the success of the conjurations, or is it something you don't recommend at all?
Well, I actually, fun enough, there's a footnote mentioning that in the book where I say that last day, that includes that. It's not after sundown either. It's just, from the day before that, after your last meal in the evening before dark, you then don't eat for through that night, through the last day, and then beginning the day of the conjuration. So yeah, I did actually. Fun enough, Stephen Skinner, when I was asking him for feedback on the book, said you should probably mention about the Islamic fast in there because people might wonder. And so, thank you, Stephen. I did add in the footnote for that.
So this brings me now to our next question, David, about the course. I want to know all about it. What can we expect? Because the minute you told me the course was happening, I think I was one of the first to sign up, and I was excited. It's like, wow, I'm finally going to get to learn from David. This is a life-changing event. And you told me within 9 hours it was sold out, and the next runs of it are waiting listed. So what can we expect from the course when you launch this?
Okay, so the book itself will be sort of like the manual for the course. We'll be working through the material in there, but I'll be discussing the material, kind of, so it's qualifying the things going on more about it. Anyone who signed up for the course is getting a copy of the paperback as part of the course price, so that they've got a copy of the workbook. And but in addition to going through it and looking at things like doing the consecrations, doing the non-conjuring bit of it, which obviously you're not going to be able to do it online over thing, but can give demonstrations of some of the practices in the course, going through all the material, but then also at the end of it going into, like I say, how to work with. At the moment, I will talk about how it can be applied to the Olympic spirits, planetary angels, and one of the groups of demons, which is going to. I think obviously people's going to be interested. I'd still recommend they do the intelligences first if they've not done any conjuration, but this will be okay. If you've done that and you want to move on, then these are the changes you make. You make this adaptation, or you make that adaptation to adaptation, I should say. To hopefully have that sort of level of success. I mean, I'm opting for spirits I've got a lot of experience of working with as the ones that I will work with people. I'm not going to jump in, although I have done a lot of work with the Ars Goetia. I'm not going to be jumping into the Goetic stuff because there's a lot of tweaking, like we discussed, for that. But there will be some other demons I've done quite a lot of work with who I will bring in a particular set of. And the Olympics, because who doesn't love the Olympic spirits?
One of the best to start with, if you ask me.
Yeah, I mean, the intelligence and the Olympics. I mean, in the past I've done work with Olympics. Because when I was running covens to give people an experience of conjuration, I did Olympic spirit conjuration with them, so they could see what it felt like and experience that. Give them a little nudge. Okay, so maybe you want to work more in the grimoires rather than just doing Wicca.
Which brings me to my next question, David. And this is also for the viewers. It's a 6-week-long program, if I'm not mistaken. And if it is, what is the flow or what is the progression of the course within each week? Are we going to be given practical methods on the first week that we could practice? Or are we going to be just getting a lot of theory and essentials so that at the end, the end goal is that we can just jump straight to the conjurations?
Okay, let me just grab the actual list so I can then give you an actual description rather than off the top of my head, but I might forget something. So the first week, we're looking at planning the conjuration, why you're doing it, what you want to achieve with it, working out a question list for spirits, also talking about how you test spirits when they arrive to make sure that you're getting who you called. There'll be a big discussion about magical momentum, how to improve your chances of success. Sigil construction, so I think the homework off that one's probably going to be doing some sigils. And talking about spirit hierarchies and like how they work. So that's the plan for lesson 1 as it stands. I mean, this may get added to or changed as we go, but the way I've got it set at the moment, lesson 2, looking at timings, plant showers, astrology, considering the weather, consecrations, which obviously is going to take a while to talk about. And again, people will be able to go away and practice consecration. The tools and the materia magica that get used. And, from the way I work with intelligences, it's like stripped down to a bare minimum. So there's nothing you don't need. Just have the necessary things, the kit you need, the equipment, and the license to remain that I created. Lesson 3, we'll be talking about fragrances, the magic circle, but also the different ways of using the circle. So the difference between a conjuration circle and a consecration circle that you do your consecrations in.
That's news. That's new information.
In fact, I have 3 that this is probably something I'll talk about in the second book, because I'd also include a divination circle.
Wow.
I mean, magic circle for if I want to do divination for a conjuration that's coming up, particularly if you're going to be putting all that work in, then I will use a magic circle to do the divination in. The triangle, the Laman and seal, talking about talismans, and about spirit contracts and what you should put in or not put in when you make a contract with a spirit.
If I may, before you go any further, sir, I have a question, which is, when I was creating some of my goetic sigils on their metal, I'd have the seal on one end and the pentagram of Solomon on the other. And then Stephen, God bless him, said, Robert, have you consecrated them yet? And I said, of course I have. But, just for the sake of the viewers, the question I'm asking is, will you be teaching textbook methods on how to consecrate seals of these spirits if we choose to make them, like the David Rankine way of consecrating a seal to Hagiel?
Yes, I will be doing consecration of the seals.
Wonderful. That's something that's going to make things very powerful. But the circle of divination, that's a new one. I mean, you're going to be talking about this during the course?
I can throw that one in as well. I mean, I was going to talk about the consecration circle and the difference between the circle for consecration and the circle for conjuration, because you don't, obviously you put a bit more energy into it in a slightly different way for conjuration than you need to for consecration. So we'll talk about that. Lesson 4, fasting, looking at the lead-in week, making sure everything's ready, the plus and minuses of indoors and outdoor working. And then like another one I think is quite significant, dream charms and their use.
Oh, wow.
Because something that I have used and encourage other people to use, particularly if it's your first conjuration, and I think ideally you really want there to be at least 2 of you doing conjuration. Yeah. You want the conjurer and you want your scribe. The conjurer can also be the scribe, or you can have a third person as the scribe, which is nice if you've got 3 people who work well together, but definitely 2. So from that perspective, certainly for the scryer, but I think it's good for both, is making a seal, which I got this idea from Collection of Magical Secrets. There's this set of 7 planetary angel seals, which you make the seal and you put it under your pillow at night and you say this prayer to the angels before going to bed for communication with it. And I thought, that would be great with the intelligences. And
we're going to learn that.
So I took the technique and I adapted it and created the sort of seal for the intelligence that I was working with. And then when I was putting the material together for this book, I noticed that 200 years before Collection of Magical Secrets, in Secret of Secrets, which was a Cunning Man's grimoire, Stephen and I brought out a few years back, there is a dream seal for Tyrael, and it was pretty much identical to the one I had, adapted that technique into. So I suddenly found myself thinking, did I adapt it intuitively, or was there something in my unconscious? Because that particular manuscript, Stephen and I looked at it back in about 2005,
Mm-hmm.
and we're on one of our visits to the Bodleian, and so that may have gone into my head, and then when I was doing this adaptation, my mind sort of pulled up that, so that I created what was essentially exactly the same image as the one that's in there, and that's in that particular Tyrael one is in the Claves Intelligentiarum. But the idea is to develop the contact, to make more of a link with that spirit before you do the conjuration, and also to have it afterwards, because there are times when, even if you've done everything right, the spirit doesn't turn up. They don't always turn up. We don't know what they're doing. We don't know the secret life of spirits. They might be busy. We don't. You don't assume they're sitting around waiting for some magician to call them up.
Very true.
They might be busy doing who knows what. So if they don't turn up, having that dream seal there gives that contact point for them to turn up afterwards to communicate with you and answer the questions that you asked.
It's like a reply button, an email reply button.
Yeah. And, spirits communicating through dreams, it's easier for them to communicate to you in dreams, because there's no sort of realm transfer and things having to go on. It's a very easy connection for them. So for that reason, I do recommend, and I've included the dream seal as part of the process, of the conjuration process in Claves. And so that'll be talked about in the course as well.
You have my fascination, though, if I can continue, about the diviner circle, because I'm a professional tarot reader here in the Philippines, and I'm curious, this divination circle, is it something that I could use as a professional tarot reader, like to boost my reading accuracies? Or is this something that you're only going to do when you're dealing with the spirits in the book?
Well, absolutely. If you've got a magic circle set up, you could use that. Some years back, how many years ago? About 13, 14 years ago, for example, Joe Leszewski, who I became friends with towards the end of his life, he was obsessed with Heptameron stuff.
Yeah,
he
I
was
remember
doing a big Mikhail conjuration, and he asked me if I would do a tarot reading for him, and I thought, and he offered to pay me for it, and I said, okay, you just give me whatever you think it's worth. And I thought, you know what, and this is where I got the idea from. I said, can you give me some information about day of the week and stuff like that? So I drew up the same Heptameron circle that he would be using.
Yes.
Did the appropriate calls, then I did the divination, and the information that came through was very helpful for him. He then ended up giving me $500 for the reading, which bought me a new laptop, which was very nice. I had a laptop named Joe in his honor for some years.
Pretty epic.
But that was the inspiration, and I use a much simpler magic circle generally when I'm doing that. So yeah, you could have a very simple circle like the one that's in Claves that I use with Intelligences as the space to do the divination in, and all you'd need to really do would be this, quick activation, and if you have a particular call that you do before you do a reading, do that, and you're away. And I think having that charged space, could give you a bit more of a boost with the readings.
And all of them in the course, right?
Yeah, I found that when I have done that, the information that has come through has tended to be really good, and the people who have received it have been very happy with. Many years ago I worked as a reader as well. I've been also doing tarot for a long time, and haven't we all?
Well, I had the honor of giving. It was lifetime honor for me. So the question I want to ask is this. Okay, so you were sharing with me earlier that within 9 hours, the course was sold out, right? How many people signed up in the first show or the first screening?
Well, I mean, I limited it to 30 places because it's going to be live Zoom chats. It's not going to be pre-recorded. I'll be on with everybody. I've got 30 is about the limit of how many I feel comfortable that I can engage with everybody. Someone said, why don't you do 50 or 100? And I thought, no, that would just be too many people. I'll just run the course again. At the moment, I'm looking at probably going to be running it again twice next year. I know there's already a pretty big waiting list. I'm not sure if the next iteration of the course is already sold out or not. If not, it's probably close to it.
So there's a waiting list already for the second course. But you know what I love about your program, David, is that not only do we get the course, we also get the book with it too. So that's like, wow. I mean, it's like the book in itself, if we get it usually for cover price, it's usually half the course fee. So we're getting an exclusively live program with you and the book. So it's just such a steal. And I'd like to know, like, since I'm lucky enough to be part of the first batch, when will the next batch of this be ran for those who missed it? And like, what can they do if they want to reserve a slot or put a down payment so that at least they can signify their interest to be part of this program?
We're probably going to be looking in about 6 months' time. So where are we? So that's probably going to be around May next year, something like that. The way to do it is to email Hadian Press and with a message saying that you'd like to be put on the waiting list for my course.
So email Hadian Press.
Yeah.
And also you were mentioned that you have to come up with a second book after this one. I guess it was too much. That plus your ever so teased and coveted Grimoire Encyclopedia 3. So it makes me ask, what can the viewers expect next? Grimoire Encyclopedia 3 or the sequel to your present book that you're releasing?
Considering how much is going to go into Encyclopedia Volume 3, it's quite possible that the follow-on book might come out first. Because I'm working on both of them at the same time. In fact, I'm working on 3 books. I'm working on another Grimoire book as well, which is like a secret project of mine. So I've kind of got 3 of them on the go.
Sign me up for all of them. I mean, like, I thought because I got Wade for Christmas a copy of your Grimoire Encyclopedia, because I don't know if in the previous episode, like I shared with you when you were there, that I said Wade got me into Grimoire magic. So like down the line, we were already doing the show. I said, dude, David Rankine has changed the game with his Grimoire Encyclopedia. Give me your mailing address. I'm sending you both for Christmas. So I thought, oh, we're set. We have both copies. And when he guessed it, oh no, that's not complete. There's another one coming. I'm like, oh my God, how is he going to outdo himself again? So it's just so exciting to know a third one is coming. Just out of curiosity, are you going to call it a 3 or could we expect like 12 before your life is done?
I'm not calling it 3 at the moment. I can see at least 3, 4, and 5.
Wow.
I think this can be my life's work. The material for 3 might end up being 3 and 4. There's so much of it. Well, and then there's other stuff which I was originally going to put in 3 that I'm now pushing back. It's going to go in 5, I think. Which is like 5 is likely to be loads more of the chapters about grimoires like are in volume 1, the 100. By that, I mean, I've already got more than 20 on my list to go into there of other grimoires that I need to do that for. So
I wanted to ask, I think you're the guy to ask this. I got my hand on a book, a grimoire that I can't find too much information on, and I'm wondering if you're going to touch on it in one of your future works, which is the Book of Oberon. I can't find too many people who wrote practical things about using it. Will you ever be tackling this in your future works or in your future grimoire encyclopedias, or is this something you're kind of hands off on?
Well, the Book of Oberon, that's an interesting topic. I mean, there is a chapter in Volume 1 about the Book of Oberon. That it's a good example of how things work with, like, in the grimoire world with, like, the sort of serious scholars, I guess. Like, Stephen and I got hold of a copy of many years back, and we had started working on translation of it. Jake Stratton-Kent was also starting to work on translation of it. And then we found out that Joe Peterson and Dan Harms were doing a translation, and they seemed to be further along. So we just said, you guys are going to do an amazing job. We stepped back, and Jake did the same. Excuse me. So, it's one of the things over the years I've tended to stay in touch with people like Joe, and I mean, obviously Stephen's my closest friend, so we're in touch a lot. But just to make sure we don't waste time by working on a project the other person's already handling.
True.
Because there's so much material that needs to be done. There's no point in two of us covering the same thing.
Yeah, that's very honorable too. And like example, I don't see the logic of both of you doing the same thing, because it's like you're dividing the pot when you're both equally qualified to talk about the topic. So that's very honorable to know that our authors still do that.
I mean, absolutely. I think there is that in like the grimoire world. There is a lot more cooperation. People are building on each other's work, and I think that's an important thing about it. Like it's great. You see, not just. I mean, obviously, I mentioned Joe Peterson and Stephen as like sort of big names, but there's loads of other people doing really good work. People like Steve Savedow has been around since he did Poetic Avocation in the 90s and practicing long before that. People like Frater Ashton Chasten, Dan Harms, Phil Lagarde, Al Cummings. There's loads of people, doing really good grimoire work, and I apologise to all the ones I haven't mentioned there. But that was just like, just give an example that there's a lot of people doing really good work and putting really good material out. So it's great. It's like we live in an unparalleled time with like this whole body of serious scholars and scholar practitioners who are putting out material for people in the tradition that was never available. So the electronic age has sort of also is becoming like the age of the grimoire.
True. Like 20 years ago, the amount of access people can have to you, to other authors, it was difficult. Like you couldn't just write a letter to Stephen Skinner and he'd reply right away. I mean, you'd probably never get to him. But now, due to things like YouTube, due to things like the online learning modules, Zoom, you actually have an interactive learning experience. And that's what I'm so thankful for with authors like you, because authors like you and authors like Stephen actually make your work with the consumer in mind. And I love that about you guys. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being such an inspiration with that.
Well, I'm not so much making it with the consumer in mind as sharing what I do and what I have learned and what's come from my research and practices, and hoping that other people find value in it.
And a lot have. So before I forget, go ahead. So good.
I'd say, I've made I've made my mistakes. I've mentioned a few in podcast interviews and things I've done. I don't claim to be perfect or some sort of great magician. It's just happens to be the thing I've devoted my life to, and to propagating that. So the more I can do, which other people find beneficial, the happier I am.
And we like I said, we are so thankful for you for that, because you've really changed the game with what you've done. So before I forget, are there any upcoming books, events, workshops that you'd like to plug to our audience so that our listeners know what's coming up on David Rankine's radar?
Well, we've kind of gone through. I mean, I think the follow-on book will probably be the next one, and there'll be volume 3 of Grimoire Encyclopedia, and then probably the Secret Project. The course, that's like I say, which I hope sometime, probably early summer next year, will be the next run of it. I'm also probably going to be doing a weekend workshop in southwest England in mid-April, which is going to be like a 2-day, going through this material, but like in a more intensive over 2 days with people in person. So. I'll be.
And for those interested, did they just reach out to Hadean Press about how to join these workshops?
This 2-day workshop isn't by Hadean, and it's not finalized yet. So when I've got more details, I'll let you know, so you can let the listeners know if they want to. I'll see if I can get a link to it. It's something that I'm still talking to the person about and just finalizing the details for currently.
Sounds wonderful. So once again, David, thank you for honoring us with your presence and telling us about your upcoming book and course. I personally am really excited. I'm going to be up at 3 a.m. on these dates just to be a part of that program so I could learn directly from you. You are an officer and a gentleman. More power to you. And Magic.tv will always be here to support you. So don't go anywhere. I'm going to wrap up the show and you and I can talk off camera for a few minutes. So once again, the ever so illustrious David Rankine guesting us. Guys, get a copy of the book once it comes out because no one does it better, honestly.
It's going to be out this week, by the way.
There you go. It's going to be out this week. I'm going to be eagerly waiting for mine here in the jungles of the Philippines. I'll probably be the first person in the country to get it. I've seen reviewers' copies of it, and it is incredibly digestible. I read it on my tablet. The only thing is, like, I like having the actual books because I like to highlight things and make notes so that when my kids look through my books, like, damn, Dad was really into this stuff. But I take the practice seriously, so the books are priceless. So once again, this is Rob Rubin and David Rankine signing off. David, don't go anywhere.
Okay, thank you very much.